O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This little piece of the story of Jacob's life today is so interesting to me because it seems so almost like gentle, doesn't it? I mean, he's going up and he's on a camping trip, it seems, and he lays his head down and he has this wonderful dream. And it's a great story. It's a gentle, loving, peace-filled story about Jacob. The only problem is we need to hear, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. Because Jacob's life was full of energy and turmoil and action and deceit and lies and all kinds of things. You see, Jacob is not perfect. In fact, Jacob is far from perfect. And I love those kind of people in the Scriptures, don't you? I mean, sometimes we look back at Scriptures and we read these stories and we read them from the point of view as we already know the outcome, don't we? And we know what's going to happen. We've known for a long time what's going to happen with Jacob and Abraham and the descendants of Abraham. And we know the story, so we read it. We almost kind of lift up Jacob from the beginning, don't we? I mean, I know we do. I do. You look at that story and you could easily say, oh, Jacob's a great guy. He's a good guy. And yet, no, he was a crook. I mean, he was a deceiver. He tricked his father. This was not a great guy. This was an average guy, maybe even on the bad side of average. But a guy who was willing to be used by God. And so we see his life, and he steals the blessing from his father as a trick. He cheated his own brother Esau out of what he was rightfully to receive. He outdid even his father-in-law's deceitfulness by taking 2 daughters, and not only that, but most of his father-in-law's property. But the thing about Jacob, in his humanness, it seemed as if he was never, ever satisfied. He always wanted a little more. He always wanted to take, to get, to gather a little bit more. And we see it over and over in his story. It's kind of like if he would have gotten the moon, he would have been back the next day to go after the stars. There was always something more that he wanted and he sought. But then all of a sudden, in the midst of this chaotic life, in the midst of, right now, by the way, he is in the hills because once again, he's tricked his brother and is escaping so he doesn't get killed, and he's in the hills and he's hiding. And so he lays down for a night's sleep. And as he lays down for the night's sleep, he uses a stone as a pillow. And then he has this dream that we've heard, that we know of. And after ripping Esau off, sleep comes and then the dream comes. But you see, it's an amazing dream because it's not a dream of con men. It's not even a dream of average men. It's God's dream that Jacob gets in this moment. You see, that's what makes the story amazing. Right now, at this point, it becomes a true turning point in the whole story of Jacob, in his whole life, in what's laid out before him. It's a God-sized dream he gets. We don't know if he was ready for it. We surely know he probably wasn't seeking it, but the dream came from God. Up until this point in his life, Jacob was all about Jacob. Jacob was all about getting what he could, pulling what he could together, and using his own resources and doing it himself. And that's why, by the way, I love We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. It was the perfect song for this message. But what's funny about that song? What's funny about the lyrics of that song? Anybody know? Jacob never climbs the ladder. It's not Jacob's ladder to climb. It's not our ladder to climb. It's God's ladder. The angels are going up and down the ladder. Jacob never sets a foot on the first rung. But sometimes we'd rather climb the ladder just like Jacob did. Isn't that easier? I mean, if we just do it ourselves, you see, we've got the same malady that Jacob had. We think we have to do everything on our own. We don't realize that God still has God-sized dreams out there. And what Jacob discovered in the midst of this dream was something wonderful. He dreamed of angels, and he dreamed of God, and he dreamed of a message that God had for him. And he learned something in the midst of this that was so significant and so important and so powerful, that God's message comes to us. God gives freely God's message to us. God's words in this dream were not scolding, but loving. It was a lesson for a man seeking all on his own. You see, we need to understand this. There are a few things in the world you can't get by yourself. You can't work hard enough to earn them. You can't make enough money to get them. You can't step on enough people to receive them. There are at least two things I know of right now. One is the love of other people. You can't make other people love you. And the other one is the love of God. You can't do anything to earn the love of God. You can't collect enough, earn enough, gain enough, because God's love is given freely. God's love is poured out upon us just like it was on this con man, this trickster, this deceiver, Jacob. God's dream for him was to receive God's love, to understand the love of God, and this became a true turning point in Jacob's life. Now, by the way, those of you that know the rest of the story know that Jacob wasn't done wrestling with God. You know there was more that came ahead, that it wasn't a smooth sailing every moment, but it was a turning point as Jacob began to realize that God's love was there. He didn't need to earn everything. He didn't need to collect everything, because it was not of his own doing, but of God's doing. It was not his dream, but it was God's dream for him. Everybody has a dream. Sometimes it's what helps us get up in the morning. But I want to say something. No matter how good your dream is, and you can have some good ones, no matter how great your dream is, and you can have some great ones, the best dreams are always from God. God has better dreams for us than we could ever dream ourselves. God has better plans for us than we could ever plan ourselves. God has laid a future out for us that we couldn't even think about. God always has dreams for us. Barbara Brown Taylor, one of my favorite preachers, said this: "We are all dreamers, but dreamers have fallen on hard times. We've been taught to think, not to dream. We have lived long enough to watch many of our dreams die hard. Only saints and children still believes their dreams will come true." Well, saints of God, our dreams can come true. Don't ever forget that. I've been having coffees. I've had 8 coffees with you so far in the last 2 weeks. I've got 47 more or something like that. I've got a lot more to do. But I want to say, I always ask, so if you haven't been at one, I want to tell you, the last question I ask you is this: if you could dream anything for our church, if money were no object and you could dream anything, what would your dream be for First United Methodist Church of Auburn? What would your dream be? And then I can tell when some folks open themselves to God, because they dream God-sized dreams for the church. And that's what we need, God-sized dreams for our church. Today we can dream again, and that's what happens so often in churches. We have a dream, and it's a great dream. And it may be to build a new sanctuary, build a new building. It may be some kind of ministry. It may be something amazing that happens, and we dream. And then we make that dream, and we forget something. We forget to dream again. You see, God's never done dreaming. God has such amazing dreams for us right here in this place. Are we ready for God-sized dreams is a bigger question. I remember, and some of you, many of you probably have seen the musical Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. If you had, the musical ends with an amazingly powerful song. Joseph sings, "Any dream will do." And if it is God's dream, Joseph is exactly right. God has dreams for our church today. God is not finished with us. God is not through with us. God has great dreams for us. The question is, do we still believe it? Do we? Do you believe that God is active, that God is alive, that God is here? Because if you believe any of those, you've got to believe in something else. God isn't done yet. God isn't through yet. Think about when the heyday of our church was. I always love people to think of that. And they always think of pastors that were here. Most of the time, by the way, when they think of those things, they're wrong. I discovered that when I was pastor at Ligonier, and we'd grown, and I said, "When do you think we were the highest ever in attendance?" And Wilbur, you'll appreciate this. They all said, "When Jack Hartman was our pastor." And I just said, when Jack Hartman was here, things were great. But you know what? Our biggest attendance is now. You see, when is the biggest attendance at First Church? It's ahead of us, not behind us, is what I believe. I believe that's the kind of God-sized dreams we need to have for this church. We may have had a heyday, but we've got a God's day coming. A God's day that's bright with the future. A God's day that wants to open our doors, open our hearts, open our minds, so the community around us will feel the love of God that we talked about last week. Something we can be known for, something we can have excellence at. Remember what I said? The most excellent way, love. God has big plans for us. The question is, are we ready for God's big plans? God has God-sized dreams for us. God still plans to accomplish amazing things through us. Do you believe it? I believe it. I know some of you believe it. I've sat in coffees and looked into your face as you were dreaming God-sized dreams. I know it when I've met with some of you one-on-one, because I felt the energy that you were dreaming God-sized dreams. I've met with the staff, and I've seen that many of our staff are already beginning to dream God-sized dreams for the future of this church. And now it's up to us to decide. Do we think God is through with us at First United Methodist Church? That's really the bottom line. Because I don't. I believe God has wonderful things if we'll just dream again. I want you to dream with me. I want you to dream God-sized dreams with me, because God is going to do amazing things. Are you ready to dream them? That's the question. I like to leave you with something each and every week for you to take home. I want you to think about what we've talked about, and I want you to go home today, and I want you to pray, and I want you to say, am I, not Jim, not Allison, not the staff, but am I willing to live out God-sized dreams at First United Methodist Church in Auburn? Seek dreams not just from yourself, but from God. And then here's the second thing to ask as we prepare to be in ministry together. Are you willing to live out those dreams? Because until you live them out, a dream is just a dream. But when you're willing to put your faith into action, a dream can become reality. I've done a lot with songs today already. I'm going to throw one more at you, which most of you won't know. And I'm going to do one more thing with that song. I'm going to change one of the words, apologies to the writer of the song. But I'm going to say to you, for us here at First United Methodist Church, today is a turning point. And I'm going to say this, it's a turning point, it's a fork stuck in the road, but God's going to grab us by the hand and to direct us where to go. Are you willing to go? Are you willing to follow? Are you willing to live out God-sized dreams? Then go do it. Amen.